Imagine a book written in desperation, a last-ditch effort to shape the future of an entire nation. In 1550, an aging reformer named Martin Bucer put quill to parchment and wrote something extraordinary, De Regno Christi, on the kingdom of Christ. It was a blueprint for what England could become if it truly followed Jesus. Martin Bucer's life had been a journey of faith and exile. Born in 1491 in Alsace, he became a Dominican friar before the Reformation swept through Europe. Inspired by Martin Luther, Bucer left the monastery and dedicated his life to reforming the church in Strasbourg. For decades, he worked tirelessly, preaching, writing, mediating between warring reformers, and dreaming of a church that reflected God's kingdom on earth. But in 1549, everything changed. Religious tensions forced Bucer to flee to England, where the young King Edward VI had just embraced Protestant reform. Bucer was welcomed to Cambridge, but he was sick, aging, and running out of time. Edward VI was only 12 years old when Bucer arrived, but he was eager to learn. Bucer saw an opportunity. If he could teach this young king what it meant to rule under Christ's lordship, perhaps England could become a model of Christian governance. So Bucer poured everything he knew into De Regno Christi, a comprehensive vision of how Christ's kingdom should shape every aspect of society. This wasn't just theology. It was political philosophy, social ethics, and pastoral wisdom all woven together. Bucer wanted Edward to understand that following Jesus wasn't just about personal faith. It was about transforming communities, laws, marriages, economies, and education. At the heart of Bucer's vision was a radical idea. Christ is king, not just of the church, but of everything. The kingdom of Christ wasn't a future, distant reality. It was breaking into the present through God's people. And earthly rulers, Bucer argued, had a sacred responsibility to align their governance with Christ's reign. This was controversial. Some reformers believed the church should stay out of politics. Others thought rulers should control the church. Bucer charted a different path. He believed church and state were distinct but cooperative partners, both serving under Christ's authority. The church was responsible for spiritual formation and discipline. The state was responsible for creating conditions where justice, mercy, and righteousness could flourish. For Bucer, this wasn't theocracy, it was kingdom living. Bucer's vision started with the most basic building block of society, marriage and family. He devoted enormous attention to reforming marriage laws, arguing that marriage wasn't just a sacrament. It was a covenant designed by God for mutual support, procreation, and the prevention of sexual immorality. Bucer was surprisingly progressive for his time. He believed marriage should be based on mutual consent and genuine commitment. He argued for the possibility of divorce in cases of abandonment, persistent adultery, or fundamental incompatibility, shocking ideas in the 16th century. He even advocated for remarriage, believing God's grace extended to broken relationships. Why did Bucer care so much about marriage? Because he believed healthy families were the foundation of healthy communities. If homes were marked by faithfulness, love, and godly formation, society would flourish. Bucer's vision extended to education and social welfare. He called for widespread education, not just for clergy, but for everyone. He believed every child, regardless of class, should learn to read scripture and understand their faith. Education wasn't just about knowledge. It was about character formation and preparing people to serve their communities. Bucer also insisted that a Christian society must care for the vulnerable. The poor, the sick, the orphan, the elderly. These weren't burdens to be managed, but image-bearers of God deserving dignity and support. He called for organized systems of poor relief, hospitals, and community care. True religion, Bucer argued, always results in justice and mercy. This wasn't charity as we often think of it, it was kingdom economics. Resources should flow toward need, not just accumulate in the hands of the powerful. Bucer believed the church had a crucial role to play in kingdom formation through what he called Christian discipline. This wasn't about punishment, it was about formation. The church was meant to be a community where believers helped each other grow in holiness, confronted sin with grace, and practiced reconciliation. Bucer envisioned pastors and elders working together to shepherd their congregations, not through domination, but through patient teaching, example, and mutual accountability. He believed in excommunication as a last resort, but always with the goal of restoration, not exclusion. The church, in Bucer's vision, was a workshop of transformation, a place where people learned what it meant to live under Christ's loving rule, and then took that formation into the world. Bucer's kingdom vision had economic implications. He critiqued greed, usury, and the exploitation of workers. He called for fair wages, honest business practices, and laws that prevented the accumulation of wealth at the expense of the poor. This wasn't socialism. Bucer believed in private property and honest profit, but he insisted that economic life must be shaped by love of neighbor and concern for the common good. Wealth was a stewardship, not an entitlement. Those with resources had obligations to those without. In Bucer's kingdom vision, there was no such thing as a purely private transaction. Every economic choice had moral and communal dimensions. Central to the Regno Christi was Bucer's vision of Christian kingship. Edward VI, Bucer argued, was not an absolute monarch. He was a servant under Christ's authority. His job was to protect the church's freedom, promote true religion, establish just laws, and create conditions for human flourishing. Bucer gave Edward specific advice: appoint godly counselors, resist flattery, listen to the poor, enforce laws fairly, and above all, submit yourself to Scripture. A Christian king, Bucer insisted, must rule with humility, wisdom, and a deep awareness of his accountability to God. This was a high calling, and Bucer knew it. He was asking a teenage king to embrace a vision of power defined by service, not domination. Tragically, Bucer died in 1551, just months after completing the Regno Christi. Edward VI read the book, but died himself in 1553 before fully implementing Bucer's vision. When Mary I took the throne, Protestant reforms were violently reversed, and Bucer's body was exhumed and burned as a heretic. But ideas don't die so easily. Bucer's vision influenced generations of Reformed thinkers, including John Calvin, who adapted many of Bucer's ideas in Geneva. English Puritans drew on Bucer's work as they imagined godly societies. Even the Westminster Confession echoes Bucer's emphasis on the state's responsibility to protect and honor true religion. The Regno Christi became a touchstone for Christians wrestling with a perennial question: what does it look like for God's kingdom to break into our political, social, and economic life? Bucer's vision raises uncomfortable questions for us today. Can faith truly transform society, or should it remain private? What obligations do governments have to promote human flourishing? How do we balance individual freedom with communal responsibility? What role should the church play in shaping public life? We might not agree with all of Bucer's answers. Some of his ideas about church-state cooperation make us nervous, and rightly so. History has shown how dangerous it can be when religious and political power merge too closely. But Bucer's fundamental conviction remains provocative. Jesus' lordship is comprehensive. The kingdom of Christ isn't just about saving souls. It's about redeeming communities, relationships, economies, and institutions. Faith that doesn't engage the world isn't biblical faith. Martin Bucer believed that when God's people live under Christ's rule, the world gets a glimpse of God's original design, communities marked by justice, mercy, faithfulness, and love. That vision didn't die with Bucer. It echoes through Scripture, pulses through church history, and still calls to us today. The kingdom of Christ is still breaking in. The question is, are we ready to live like it?